This podcast is a conversation by Julie Benetti and Susan Barbaro and is a production of VI Alliance, copyright 2019. And this chart-busting hit, Alone Leave Me, courtesy of New Threads, is available everywhere.
Hi, this is Susan, and I'm here with Julie today to have a discussion about planning. Whenever Julie and I sit down and have a conversation, she always goes, "Stop! Don't say anything! This is a podcast!" And I'm always like, We have this ongoing argument that I'm more like, I'd like to plan out a little bit. I don't mean exactly like I'm not reading from a script, but to kind of have a general idea of like kind of the podcasts and where we want to go with them. And this isn't just a conversation about, oh, Julie and I, we fight about this or anything. This is almost like a fundamental difference. She kind of likes to go off the cuff. And what are we going to talk about? If we do that, it's like, the people on Facebook that go on, their posts.
Don't.
I know you don't. And I'm not on it either, but sometimes the Facebook's like, I got up today and I did 100 things. 1, I had coffee. 2, and you're like, oh no. So this is what we're talking about today, and not just about my way versus her way. It's more of a fundamental difference actually in life.
Well, considering that I haven't planned for this, I'm at a loss because I don't have, 100 different pages of, lists of... Once again, these are conversations. And so when we get together, we really do have conversations because people have said to us, oh my God, your conversation, can I join in? Or, we wish we were sitting at the table having the conversation with you both. I mean, if I went out and I have a list of talking points, that's ridiculous.
Wait a minute.
In the sense of planning something, I mean, really, we have all these podcasts about energy, about outside society, about things that we're reading, and we're just kind of flowing by the conversation that we have. This is really what they are. They're not scripted.
We had a conversation earlier. I was talking about, I'm going to say it, my son saying about stop planning everything. I tend to be more of a planner. To a degree. I'm not anal, and I'm not one of these, I'm not, Martha Stewart-ish. Sometimes it's somewhat being prepared. I don't mean that I have every single thing for every possible scenario.
I've been a teacher and I'm a writer, and there's certain things that I know that I do or that occur, and I'll segment it into things, and that's not making a list and planning. It's kind of like, oh, that would be an interesting conversation to have with you, and then I don't think about it anymore, because also from my radio background, when you think about something, if you're doing an intro to something, you tend to use, what was coming out spontaneously and creatively, and then you're at a loss when the mic goes live to say what you want to say. That's why I don't want to talk about it before we do it. It loses the energy.
So apply that to life.
Okay, let me drill it down. So you get up in the morning, so you go out, you head out to the bank, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. If you maintain a strict focus to that one list, you might miss, the beautiful bird that flies by. You might miss some sale that's going on somewhere. You might miss something that's right in front of you because you've planned out your whole day.
Well, that's if you plan step by step versus, for me, if I go out and I have 5 things I need to do, I kind of think, okay, instead of driving 10 miles going back and forth and back and forth. Now, that doesn't mean along the way I don't meet somebody and they say, let's grab a coffee, and so I do it. It doesn't mean that I'm steadfast. So this, to me, is more a conversation about life, about direction in life, about being present. Do you have the presence of taking advantage of what shows up in front of you, yet still having an end goal that you're working towards? Being as flexible enough to vacillate between different options that might come up along the way.
To me, generically, we all live with an angst against uncertainty. And when we have an angst against uncertainty, we feel better if we have some kind of plan or some kind of idea, or whatever reasons those are, our habits or whatever. Yet in the realm of doing that, sometimes we miss the actuality of just being present with what occurs. And so, for example, anticipation is huge, because this conversation could go right into emotions. Because if you're anticipating someone visiting, you could be sitting there thinking, oh, this would be cool, that would be cool, this would be cool, that would be cool. And then when the person comes And if they want to do something completely different and you're not open to it because you have so many ideas and plans, you feel like your expectations aren't met. And that reflects upon yourself, but it also reflects on the other person as well, because if they're kind of hit with, well, I had all these expectations that you were going to do this, 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 and this, that's hard. You go into emotion. I mean, so sometimes anticipation works really well for us because it's exciting to get excited about something and have your adrenaline pump and say, oh, I'm really happy and I can't wait. Yet, while you're waiting, you start to plan, and sometimes you can overplan. It's like if you're waiting in line for a movie, and it's a blockbuster movie that's opening, and it's opening night, and you can't wait to see it. There's an awesome energy there in the anticipation. That's an adrenaline rush. That's you're there with a group of people. You're in community. That's wonderful. When you get to the door and you sit in the movie, and maybe the movie's not that great, it's kind of like, let me go back to
let's go to the spot where it's even a great movie. It can be a great movie.
It can be a great movie.
And what you're saying is right.
But what I'm saying is, you can either way, you reach that beginning end point to that anticipation. So we're really talking about anticipation. And if anticipation, gets overrun by planning and expectation, that's when it gets difficult, because the expectations are difficult to have. Oftentimes they're not met.
So I understand what you're saying, and you bring up a good point when you talk about anticipation and people, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that can relate to that the anticipation of something is even better than the event. And this is a question I have many times. Do you just not do anything? You have something you want to do, but you don't plan for it. I mean, can it still occur if you don't plan for it? Again, I'm going to say my son's coming out, and we're talking, I was telling you about, I'm excited, he's coming out, and I wanted to make food and get stuff. He said it to me first, beat me up for it, and then you jumped on saying, just be happy he's coming out and stop there. Stop planning. I love cooking and creating things.
So my comment, and I laughed heartily when he said that, because I thought it was brilliant, because I understood what he was saying but it was an expression or a request from his standpoint, because he can't give you the reaction to your planning that you're looking for right now. When you're in anticipation, you got to stay in anticipation. So you share with me and say, oh my God, I'm going to make cookies. I'm going to make this. I'm going to make that. I'm really excited. I mean, sometimes you can say, I want to make this. And if he's not in the anticipation, I mean, we can't always drag people into the anticipation. Sometimes the anticipation is just for us.
Mm-hmm.
There's that solitary feeling of that anticipation. That's not to say, that he wouldn't have an anticipation of coming home and all that other kind of stuff, but he has other things associated with that. So my comment wasn't, you can't plan. I mean, of course you can plan. Yet the anticipation of it is really hard to share unless you're in that group of all the people going in at once to the Harry Potter exhibit, to the movie. It's awesome because it's this huge magnified sensation of the anticipation. And some people love that, waiting in line for concert. I'd rather see the concert. I don't want to wait in line with people I don't know.
So if you take that and you apply that to life, it's an interesting thing, because, you hear from people what you want, you make that your goal, you put it clearly in your head, and you move forward with it. One of the scientific principles is you can only focus on where you are or where you're going. So doesn't that sort of offset that whole philosophy as to, the anticipation of it versus being there? If I were going to interpret it in terms of that principle, then you're always just where you are. You're never where you're going. You're just where you are all the time.
Exactly.
And that's what they talk about, presence.
Right. I think when you add the communal part to it, when you start to share that, so there's nothing wrong with planning. As a teacher, I planned tons for my classes, and I would bring it in, and half the time I wouldn't use it, depending on what the situation was. That was being present with them. The planning was there. They could have enjoyed it. They could look at the pile of stuff, or not. I could use something from it or not. Yet I planned because, I wanted to. I thought it was necessary, whatever. There were times I went in just spontaneously, and whatever the conversation was.
The difference is when you said communal, so it's when you share that. That's when you're saying
right. So
the problems.
Well, not the problems, but the anticipation that you have of that. You're trying to share with him that you're excited he's coming, which it would be easier to say, hey, I'm excited you're coming, and let him fill it in. And that's not to say, that's the best way to approach it. But that was a brilliant thing to say about planning, because it's true. Sometimes you can drown in planning. We've all done it. You can drown in planning and then you never end up doing something. I mean, how many books have we written together, and how many people are out there? I'm planning to write a book. And they never do. I got a story to tell. And they're planning. Are they really planning? So sometimes when you're planning, are you really planning? Maybe you're just sharing the excitement. My son's coming home. I'm excited.
So I think there's two different things that we're kind of talking about. It's funny when you started saying about people who are writing a book and saying, oh, I'm going to write a book. I'm so excited about it. I plan a lot, but I'm a big doer. So I don't just plan. That's why, we met like 6 years ago, I think, and we've written 10 books or something like that. I mean, a ton of them. I'm not one to sit and talk about it. I'm not one to write a book. I'm not an author. I don't write. I've written many things professionally, for work, more business type. I've never been really more of like a creative, but I know you're laughing.
No, what I'm laughing about is I just heard, I didn't plan to be an author.
Because I don't still consider myself a writer. I just, when I want to do something, I'll sit and write it, or I'll sit and talk about it, or I'll sit and do it.
That's being a writer. So, I mean, it's not what anyone else says a writer is. It's what you say a writer is. And you wrote some books. So there you go. You're an author.
So, right, yes.
And I mean, I'm a doer too, and I'm a planner
so I
too.
think when you say that, I think there's two sides of it. There's the planner that's really this is what I'm going to do. They always talk about what they're going to do, but never do it. That's one piece of it. And that's a whole other podcast. But then there's the side of the planning. And I guess what I'm trying to distinguish is, at what point is planning no longer planning? You're no longer present because you've jumped into planning.
I think to answer that part before you start the second part B is, I think it's when you share it and you try to elicit that same interpretation and reaction from someone else. And they're not in that present space. They're in a different space that's still where you are and where you're going to be and where you're both going to be. But the anticipation, if it's taken generically, just being in the anticipation, you can share that with anyone. Because I said it was brilliant what he said, because if you get locked into planning, because what happens is we're our own worst enemies there. Then you think, but I don't know, when's he going to come? How's he going to be here? These are questions you can't answer because they're in the future.
Right.
Guess what? You went right out of the present. And I said, enjoy the anticipation. You're sharing the anticipation. I'm really excited he's coming. Sometimes just saying that is huge. And that doesn't mean, planning is good or bad, or, being in the moment is good or bad, or the anticipation is good or bad.
So I think when you're doing it, there's a point that's like that fine line of preparing yet being present. I'm trying to say there's the extreme, but then when you get down to the average person, there's a fine line between planning and being prepared, yet being present and being flexible.
And do you think that fine line might be just enjoying where you are? And whether it's an anticipation of what's to come, you're enjoying where you are and you're sharing that, or it's an anticipation of what's occurring right now, you're enjoying where you are with that.
Okay, so I'm just thinking like you have a long-term goal. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying the practicality of it, because I think maybe it comes down to habits and emotion and all these other things that pop in that take you out of that space of being able to enjoy it. That's okay. I'm not disagreeing. I'm saying it's interesting. So what pulls you out of it? Would be maybe your own habits as to how you react to whatever occurs, or emotion.
There's often a reaction based in when you share your anticipation about something with someone, and their reaction might not be in the same energy and vibration of what your anticipation is.
So, I mean, if we rely upon feelings, I think that's what makes us feel as though we're interpreting things is through our feelings. That's our interpretation.
Well, when feelings go into emotion, that makes it difficult, because then it's based in occurrences that we remember and what we reflect upon, and then a whole bunch of baggage.
That's why I say it becomes interpretation.
Baggage comes in, right?
Right, so we interpret it,
right?
But then exactly our interpretation is based on our history.
Right,
our history and mine are different.
Right, and it's not clear because you don't know what the situation is going to be. You don't know. You're planning, but you don't know.
Well, for all you planners out there,
it's not a bad thing.
Plan on listening to a few more of the podcasts.
Of anticipation. Thank you for listening to this production from EI Alliance. Check out our Amazon authors pages for books and podcasts. Find New Threads music and their latest album on iTunes, Spotify, and newthreads.us.